A Confession, which is ITV's big drama. This one stars Martin Freeman. This is a true life crime story written by the master of those, Jeff Pope. He brought us Mrs. Biggs, An Appropriate Adult, and more recently one I didn't see about Hatton Garden. But
More Size.
All of those big
Scylla
crime dramas you can think of, and Scylla were written by Jeff Pope.
Was there a murder in Scylla? I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Couple of
music
cats.
career. Yeah.
A few of the songs.
So this is Martin Freeman as DS Steve Fulcher, who's drawn into the case of missing girl Sian O'Callaghan. And annoyingly for me, this story was actually told last year as an ITV documentary. I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but it told you the whole story, had proper interviews with Steve Fulcher and things like that. So I sort of know where this story's going, but it's the story of a missing girl and the investigation into her disappearance. And then on the other side, there's Imelda Staunton's character, who's estranged from her daughter and wanting to see her after years apart. Those are the basic starting points for A Confession. Now, I have a confession to make. We watched 4 shows this week, and this morning, when I knew we were going to record the podcast, I was convinced I hadn't watched one. And I was thinking, and I'd completely forgotten that I'd seen The Confession. Because
come on.
Sorry, Gary.
I thought if anyone was going to do that, it would be me.
I'd completely forgotten I'd seen this. I should preface this by saying it's similar in style and tone to Manhunt, which I didn't like the first episode of, but then became one of the best shows of the year. I found it really plodding, and actually...
I agree. It wasn't...
When I read about it, and I was like, oh, this is 6, and all of Jeff Pope's other things have been 5, 3, 1, and I'm thinking, how are they going to stretch this story over 6? Because I know what the story is, and I just found it so dull, and I was really looking forward to it. But I don't think I'm going to watch this anymore either, because A, I know the story, and B, I found it quite boring.
I suppose, yeah, it does feel like oddly elongated, because I reckon a lot of people are going to be, well, why is it called A Confession? And I sort of know the basic building blocks of this, but if you just watched it, who's confessing to what? You sort of, they didn't really reveal very much in this first episode, apart from, but then again, Luke, you've just shot yourself in the foot, because this was all about building up the characters.
No, I agree.
And I think that's the only thing that we're sitting here saying, in the capture, everything happens in episode 1, and Luke's already sort of checks out. In this one, it's kind of the reverse, like, they've really only done one little part of this story, and I'm not as familiar. I do kind of remember, but I don't think I watched the documentary, but I remember hearing about it. So we know what's coming, but they've really, I think they're going to fill 6 episodes no problem, in my opinion, because they've hardly done anything.
ITV were very clever with Manhunt, because I had a similar reaction.
It was only 3, wasn't it?
Well, it was only 3, and they put it over 3 nights, so it meant that I could watch episode 2 on Tuesday and episode 3 on Wednesday. This has got that week's gap that terrestrial TV loves, obviously, and I have to be honest, I really struggled to get through this.
It needed a hook at the end of episode 1 to
like
get you to come back to episode 2.
Like the capture, there was a lot of familiar faces here. You had Ian Pulston Davis, Siobhan Finner, and Peter White. All these. John Thompson was there as this sort of disgrace.
That wasn't great casting for me, because John Thompson's well known, and that part didn't need to be. It didn't need to be John Thompson, if you know what I mean. I don't know. That didn't sit well with me. I know there's more to come with that storyline and how it fits in, but I don't know.
I know we were always disparaging of the Luke special, but this feels like one that could have actually done with.
I should actually say what this Luke special is, in case people are wondering. This is when shows do this thing where they show you a really exciting or tense or important moment, and then they, in the next scene, flashback to a year earlier, or 6 months later, or 30 days earlier, or whatever, and completely take you out. That's one of my bugbears.
As someone who watched the documentary, is Martin Freeman sort of similar to this DS? Because one of the things that they praised Martin Clunes for was he's sort of nailing the mannerisms of the chap he was playing in Manhunt.
Not in looks or voice or anything. I tell you who would be closer, oddly, is Ian Pulston Davis. He looks a lot like him. But obviously he's not a big enough name, really, to hold the whole show.
I didn't really like Martin Freeman in this, I have to be honest. I think the character's a bit dull, and I felt like there was no character in him at all. The only part of emotion that you really saw for him was where they rung him when he's got his pizza. You know, that was the only realistic moment of like, we've all done that. You know, you sit down to eat your dinner, the doorbell goes, the phone rings, and you're like, ugh. That was the only kind of realistic part of his character that I saw.
You get the impression he's not one for police politics because he's sort of semi-chastised for his early meeting with the John Thompson character, isn't he? Like, it's not looking good on you to be liaising with someone who's got this sort of, impending prosecution against them. Yeah, and again, as you say, a lot of sort of similarities to Manhunt in that they have the scenes where they're all sitting around the table and divvying out the jobs and things like that and trying to sort of organise the search parties for this girl who's gone missing. And I think this really suffers from being out, 6 or so months after Manhunt was out. Very similar, true crime story. And I think spreading it out over 6, it feels like it's already suffering from that.
It didn't grab me at all. And actually, obviously on the preview site, we get it without the ads and things. And I remember thinking the first ad break was really odd because it didn't have anything leading up to it, or there
which is very unusual for ITV drama, because normally I praise them that they do actually do those little jumps into adverts. Particularly in Endeavour, they do that all the time. They always do little reveals, or little surprises.
I would say there are 0 hooks in this. And I don't want to spend the next 5 weeks watching it. I really.
But do you think that's because it's true? Therefore, it's because it's linked to a true story. You can't just add things in.
Well, no, I appreciate that. But I've watched a lot of other Jeff Pope's things, and a lot of them have been some of my favourite TV. But I don't think this. This cast is really boring. Strange one. A Confession airs on Monday nights on ITV, and bizarrely it's 6 episodes. Normally I'm saying that UK stuff needs to be a bit longer, but I think they could chop 2 episodes out of this and not really lose a lot of story.
Well, other than we won't find out what happened because they'll cut off the last 2 episodes.
I was thinking like 2 in the middle or 2 at the beginning.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough, yeah. It won't make sense when they arrest people then,
No, that's very
like a jump cut,
Yeah, very true.